It was the late 1800s, a time when life was tough and survival depended on the strength of one's will. Far from the busy towns and the clamor of city life, deep in the heart of the Rocky Mountains, there lived a man whose name was spoken only in hushed whispers. His name was Ronan Blackwood, and to most people he was a mystery. Those who had dared venture into the mountains claimed to have seen him, tall and rugged with a beard as thick as the forest itself, his eyes hard like stone. But no one truly knew him. They only knew of his reputation. Ronan wasn't always a man of solitude. Once he had been a frontiersman, someone admired and respected by the people who lived in the towns below the mountains. He was known for his strength, his skill with a rifle, and his bravery in dangerous situations. But life, as it often does, took a cruel turn. A tragic event turned his world upside down. Some said it was the loss of his family that pushed him into isolation. Others said it was the betrayal of someone he loved. Whatever it was, Ronan Blackwood retreated into the mountains where no one could reach him. The once social man became a shadow of his former self. The cabin where Ronan lived was tucked away in a small valley, hidden from view by towering peaks. It stood alone, its weathered wooden walls blending into the landscape. There was no path leading to it, and the journey to find it was perilous at best. The only people who ventured near were those who lived in the nearby towns, but even they knew better than to approach the cabin. The townsfolk often spoke of Ronan, though no one had seen him in years. Children were told stories about him, stories about a man who had been cursed by the mountains, a man who could not be tamed. They said his heart was as cold as the snow that blanketed the peaks, that he lived in silence, surrounded only by the howling winds and the endless expanse of wilderness. They also spoke of his wildness. Some even said he had turned into something less than human, a creature that belonged to the wilds. But Ronan's life, though filled with grief and isolation, was not as people imagined it. He had not become a monster. No, he was simply a man who had suffered too much and could not find a way to heal. His heart had closed off to the world, and he lived in quiet pain, avoiding the eyes of others. Each day, Ronan would tend to his small farm. He raised livestock, hunted, and did what was necessary to survive. His only company was the silence of the mountains and the few animals that wandered through the valley. He didn't mind the solitude. It was what he wanted. Yet on the rare occasion when he did interact with someone, he was polite, though distant. He had learned long ago not to get too close to anyone. One day, while checking the mail at the local trading post, something unusual caught his eye. A letter. It was a simple thing sent in a plain envelope. There was no return address, just his name written in neat handwriting across the front. It seemed odd, but Ronan didn't give it much thought at first. He had received few letters in his life, and even fewer in recent years. Curiosity got the better of him, and he opened it. Inside, he found a letter from a woman. Her name was Anna Clayton, and she was writing to him from a far-off town many miles away. Her words were kind, but they carried an unexpected request. She was a woman looking for a new life, one far from the crowded streets and the small, suffocating town she had grown up in. She had heard of him, of the man who lived alone in the mountains, and she asked in no uncertain terms if he would marry her. Ronan was taken aback. He read the letter again, making sure he hadn't misread it. "Please marry me," the letter began. "I want to leave my past behind and start a new life. I believe you and I could build something good together if you will have me." At first he thought it was some kind of joke. He had been alone for so long that the idea of a woman wanting to marry him seemed laughable. Surely she had mistaken him for someone else. He was not the man he had once been, the one who had been respected and admired. Now he was a hermit, a man who lived in isolation and had no interest in being a part of anyone's life. But then, as he sat alone in his cabin, something inside him stirred. The letter had been sent with such sincerity, such hope, that he could not simply dismiss it. Could it be that this woman, this stranger, had seen something in him that he could not see in himself? Could she possibly want to be with someone like him? For days, Ronan pondered the letter. He read it over and over again, trying to make sense of it. The more he thought about it, the more questions arose. Why would she want to marry a man like him? Was she desperate? Or had she truly seen something in him worth pursuing? Ronan didn't know the answers. But what he did know was that the idea of someone, especially a woman, wanting to build a life with him was a foreign concept. It made him uneasy, yet also curious. He had lived in the mountains for so long, removed from the world, that the thought of companionship, even a distant possibility, was almost too much to comprehend. As the days passed, Ronan's mind wandered back to the letter. He couldn't shake the feeling that his life was about to change, that something was drawing him back into the world from which he had withdrawn so long ago. But whether it was the pull of the past, the desire for something more, or the hope that Anna's letter offered, he could not say. And so he made a decision. He would write back. The days after Ronan received Anna's letter were filled with uncertainty. He wasn't sure what to make of it. The idea of a woman wanting to marry him, a man who had spent years alone in the mountains, seemed impossible. But as the days passed, something inside him shifted. He couldn't stop thinking about her words, about the possibility that someone might actually want to build a life with him. After much contemplation, Ronan decided to respond. He wrote back to Anna in a simple, honest letter. He told her the truth about his life in the mountains, the solitude, the silence, and the pain he had carried for so long. He didn't sugarcoat anything. If she still wanted to come, he said, she would be welcome. He couldn't promise her a life of luxury, but he could offer her a life of peace away from the noise and busyness of the towns. And if she truly wanted to take a chance on him, he would try his best to be the man she hoped he could be. Ronan wasn't sure what kind of response he would get. It wasn't the kind of letter he was used to writing. His words were blunt but honest, and he hoped they would be enough. As he sealed the envelope and sent it off, he couldn't help but feel a strange mixture of hope and fear. What if she didn't respond? What if she was only trying to escape her life and didn't really mean what she said? But then again, what if she did come? What if this was the chance he had been waiting for all along? Weeks went by before Anna's reply arrived. Ronan had all but forgotten about the letter when he went to check the mail one morning. To his surprise, there was another letter waiting for him, this time sealed with care and marked with Anna's handwriting. His heart raced as he opened it, eager to see what she had to say. Anna's letter was filled with excitement and hope. She had read his words, and instead of being frightened, she had found herself drawn to them. She spoke of her own life, how she had grown tired of the small town she had always known and how she longed for something more. She had no family left, and the thought of starting fresh with Ronan, even in the mountains, seemed like the opportunity she had been waiting for. She wrote that she would come to him no matter what, and that she hoped he would be patient with her. As Ronan read her words, a sense of disbelief washed over him. Anna wasn't afraid of the challenges that living in the mountains might bring. She wasn't scared of the solitude, the hard work, or the harsh conditions. Instead, she saw it as a chance to build something meaningful, something real. Her letter was filled with determination, and it stirred something deep within Ronan. For the first time in a long while, he allowed himself to feel hope. Anna made her preparations carefully. She sold off the few belongings she had, packed what she could carry, and made her way to the train station. The journey to Ronan's remote cabin would be long and difficult, but she didn't mind. She had never been one to shy away from a challenge. In fact, she welcomed it. The town where she had grown up was small, and the people there were often narrow-minded. They looked down on her for wanting something different, for dreaming of a life beyond what was expected of her. Ronan, she thought, might be the escape she had been searching for. The trip was exhausting, but Anna was determined. She traveled by wagon, on foot, and by horseback. Navigating through rough terrain and unpredictable weather, she had never seen the mountains before, and the landscape took her breath away. The towering peaks, the vast forests, and the open skies felt like an entirely different world. But no matter how beautiful the surroundings were, Anna's mind was always on the end of her journey. She thought about Ronan, the man she had never met, and wondered what he would be like. By the time Anna reached the foot of the mountain, the sun was beginning to set. She had no idea what to expect when she arrived at his cabin. Would Ronan be the man she had imagined from his letters, or would he be someone entirely different, someone more distant and harder to reach? The thought made her nervous, but she pushed it aside. She had come this far, and there was no turning back now. The final part of her journey was the most difficult. The trail up the mountain was steep and narrow, and the air was thin, making it harder to breathe. Anna's legs ached with each step, but she refused to stop. She was close now, so close to the man she had decided to spend her life with. As she climbed higher, the wind picked up and the cold began to settle in. Her fingers grew numb, but she pressed on, her heart pounding in her chest. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Anna reached the top. There, standing in front of her, was the cabin. It looked as she had imagined, weathered, isolated, and surrounded by trees. But what she hadn't expected was the silence. There was no sound, not even the usual rustle of the wind. Everything was still. Anna hesitated for a moment, her heart racing. She had no idea what kind of welcome she would receive. She could hear the beat of her own pulse in her ears as she approached the door. Slowly, she raised her hand and knocked, her breath coming in short bursts. The door opened with a creak, and there he stood, Ronan Blackwood. Tall, broad-shouldered, and with a face that looked as if it had been carved from stone. His eyes were dark, yet there was a softness in them that Anna hadn't expected. He didn't smile, but his gaze held hers for a moment, as if he were sizing her up, trying to decide whether she was really what she appeared to be. "Anna Clayton?" he asked, his voice deep and quiet. "Yes," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm here to be with you." For a moment, neither of them spoke. It was as though the weight of everything that had brought them to this point hung in the air between them. Anna wasn't sure what would happen next, but she knew one thing. She had made the right decision. Ronan stepped aside, motioning for her to come in. "Welcome," he said softly. And with that, Anna stepped into the cabin, her new life beginning at last. The first moments in Ronan Blackwood's cabin were quiet. Anna stepped inside, feeling a chill in the air, the scent of pine and wood smoke thick around her. The small, dimly lit room had a worn, rustic feel. It was exactly as she had imagined, simple and functional, with just enough to survive. There was a stone fireplace on one wall, a large wooden table in the center of the room, and shelves lined with books, tools, and dried herbs. Despite the coldness of the cabin, there was something comforting about it. It felt like a place where a person could find peace. Ronan motioned for her to sit at the table. Anna hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to say. She had traveled so far, had dreamed of this moment for months, yet now that she was here, she felt a strange sense of uncertainty. She had imagined this meeting in her mind over and over again, but reality was always different from a dream. "Tea?" Ronan asked in his deep, quiet voice, breaking the silence. Anna nodded, grateful for the offer. Ronan moved to a small stove, and soon the warmth of boiling water filled the air. She watched him as he worked, his movements purposeful and steady. He seemed exactly as he had described in his letters, guarded, distant, but not unkind. The man who had lived alone for so long had no reason to trust others, and yet here she was, a stranger in his home, hoping to build a life with him. Ronan returned to the table, setting 2 cups of tea down in front of them. He sat across from Anna, his eyes studying her for a moment before he spoke again. "Why did you come all this way?" he asked, his voice tinged with curiosity but also with something else. Perhaps doubt, perhaps fear. Anna looked at him, her heart beating faster. She had been asked this question many times before, but never like this. This time the answer mattered. She could tell he was waiting for something real, something that could make sense of the strange connection between them. "I came because I wanted a change," Anna said simply. "I was tired of my old life, of the town where nothing ever changed. I wanted something more. I wanted freedom. And when I read your letter, I felt like it was a chance, maybe the only chance at something different." Ronan's brow furrowed slightly as he listened. He didn't speak right away, and Anna wondered what he was thinking. Perhaps he was trying to decide whether he had made a mistake in inviting her here. She couldn't blame him. She was a stranger, and there were so many things about her life that didn't make sense to him. "I'm not what you might expect," Ronan said, breaking the silence again. His eyes dropped to the table as he spoke, as though the weight of his words was too heavy to carry in his gaze. "I've been alone for a long time. I'm not good at being with others. I don't know how to make this work." Anna looked at him, her heart softening. She could see the truth in his eyes, the pain that had shaped him. It wasn't a simple thing, being isolated for so long. She had expected the quiet, the solitude, but she hadn't expected the fear of being close to someone again, of letting someone into his life after all these years. "I understand," Anna said, her voice gentle. "I'm not asking for perfection. I don't expect things to change overnight, but I believe that we can help each other. You don't have to do this alone anymore." Ronan's eyes flickered to hers, and for a moment there was a softness there, a flicker of something he had long buried. But then just as quickly it was gone. He took a sip of his tea, his face returning to its usual stoic expression. "I've spent so many years living like this," Ronan murmured, almost to himself. "I don't know if I can let someone in. I'm used to being by myself." Anna felt the weight of his words, but she also felt the hope in them. He was being honest with her, and that was a step. It was something they could work with. She had not come to him with grand expectations or a fairy tale dream. She had come to build something real, something grounded in mutual understanding. They spent the next few hours in quiet conversation. Ronan told her about his life in the mountains, about the peace he found in the wilderness, the hardships he had faced, and the things he had learned. Anna listened carefully, asking questions, offering understanding without pushing him. She could tell that talking about his past was difficult for him, but she could also sense that he was starting to trust her, little by little. As night fell, Ronan prepared a simple meal. Anna was grateful for it, though she had no idea how she would manage to keep up with the hard work that life in the mountains demanded. She was used to a different kind of life, one where she could walk to the market, where food was easy to come by, and where people helped one another. Here it was all about survival, and she wasn't sure if she was ready for it, but she had already made the decision. She was here, and she would do whatever it took to make this work. The next morning, after a quiet night of sleep, Anna woke early, determined to start contributing. She helped Ronan with the chores around the cabin, chopping wood, cleaning, and gathering water from the nearby stream. The work was harder than she had expected, but it gave her a sense of purpose. Ronan watched her as she worked. At first he had been distant, unsure of how to include her in his routine. But as the day went on, he saw something in Anna. She wasn't like the others who had visited his cabin in the past, people who had been afraid or unwilling to understand his way of life. Anna was different. She was strong, resourceful, and determined. They worked together in silence, but there was a growing sense of understanding between them. Slowly, Ronan began to see that Anna wasn't trying to change him. She wasn't asking him to be someone else. She simply wanted to be part of his life, to share it with him. As the day came to an end, they sat by the fire, their bodies tired but their hearts a little lighter. For the first time in a long while, Ronan felt a sense of peace. It wasn't the kind of peace he had found in solitude, but it was a different kind, one that came from being with someone who understood him, someone who was willing to accept him as he was. "I'm not perfect," Ronan said quietly as he stared into the flames. "But maybe we can make this work." Anna smiled, her eyes shining with hope. "We can," she said softly. "Together." As the days turned into weeks, Anna and Ronan settled into a rhythm. The quiet life they had begun to build together in the mountain cabin felt more natural with each passing day. The work was hard, cutting firewood, tending to the small garden, and caring for the animals, but Anna found a certain satisfaction in it. Every task, no matter how small, seemed to bring her closer to the life she had dreamed of. The days were filled with meaningful work and the nights with peaceful silence, broken only by the crackling of the fire. Ronan had become more comfortable around her. Though he still didn't speak much, his actions spoke louder than words ever could. He would cook a simple meal, carefully making sure she had enough to eat, even though he rarely showed much emotion. He wasn't the kind of man to openly express his feelings, but Anna could tell that his gestures meant something. He was allowing her into his life bit by bit. He had become used to her presence, and for the first time in years he didn't feel so alone. But despite the comfort they had begun to find with each other, there was still something unspoken between them. Ronan had not yet opened up about the painful events that had caused him to retreat into the mountains all those years ago. He would speak of the mountains, of the seasons and the changes in nature, but he never spoke of the past. Anna could sense that there was something heavy on his heart, something that kept him from fully trusting her. One evening, as the sun began to set and the cold mountain air began to creep in, Anna sat by the fire watching the flames flicker and dance. Ronan was outside chopping wood as he did every evening. Anna thought about how much she had come to rely on his steady presence, how much she had come to care for him. Even though they had not yet spoken of the past, she understood that it wasn't easy for him to open up. But she also knew that without trust, they would never be able to truly build a life together. As she sat there, she heard the sound of footsteps approaching. Ronan entered the cabin, his face tired but calm. He set down the axe and removed his coat, his movements slow and deliberate. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Anna watched him closely, sensing that something was different tonight. There was a quiet tension in the air, something that made her heart beat a little faster. Ronan sat across from her by the fire. For a long time, neither of them said a word. The silence was thick, heavy with unspoken thoughts and emotions. Finally, it was Anna who broke the stillness. "Ronan," she began softly, "I know you've been through a lot, and I know you've carried that pain with you for a long time, but I want you to know that I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." Ronan's eyes met hers, and for a moment Anna thought he might say something, but then he looked away, his gaze falling to the floor. The silence stretched between them again, this time longer, more uncomfortable. "I'm not asking you to tell me everything," Anna continued, her voice gentle but firm, "but I need you to trust me. I want to understand what's kept you here, away from everyone. I want to help if you'll let me." Ronan's face tightened, and Anna could see the conflict in his eyes. She knew it wasn't easy for him to open up, but she also knew that if they were going to move forward, he had to let go of the pain that held him back. He took a deep breath, his hand resting on the arm of the chair. Finally, he spoke, his voice low but steady. "It's not something I like to talk about," Ronan said, his eyes still downcast. "It's easier to pretend that it doesn't matter, that it's all in the past." Anna waited patiently, not pressing him, but giving him the space to speak if he wanted to. "It was years ago," Ronan continued. "I had a family, a wife, a son. We lived in a small house not far from here. It wasn't much, but we were happy. At least I thought we were." His voice faltered for a moment, but he pressed on. "One winter, a group of men came through. They were trouble. I should have known better, but I let my guard down. They took everything I had. My wife, my son, and then they left. I never saw them again." Anna's heart tightened in her chest as she listened to his words. She could hear the pain in his voice, the grief that still haunted him even after all these years. "I couldn't stay in that place," Ronan continued, his voice distant. "Every corner reminded me of them. I couldn't breathe without thinking of what I had lost. So I left. I came up here to be alone. I thought if I was far enough away I could forget. I thought the mountains would give me peace." Anna's eyes filled with sympathy as she listened to his story. She could feel the weight of his loss, the unbearable emptiness that had driven him into the mountains. It made sense now. Why he had chosen to live alone, why he had shut himself off from the world. He had lost everything, and in his grief he had built walls around himself that no one could penetrate. "I'm sorry," Anna whispered, her voice filled with compassion. "I didn't know. I had no idea." Ronan shook his head, his eyes now meeting hers, though there was still a distance in his gaze. "It doesn't matter now," he said quietly. "It's been years. I don't expect anyone to understand." Anna reached out, placing her hand gently on his. For a moment Ronan stiffened, but then he relaxed, his hand softening under hers. "It does matter," Anna said softly. "It matters to me. And I want to help you heal, Ronan. I can't take away your pain, but I can be here with you. I can be the person who listens, who stays by your side." Ronan looked at her, his expression unreadable. The quiet, distant man she had come to know seemed to disappear for a moment, replaced by a man who was vulnerable, who had suffered more than he had ever let on. "I don't know if I can ever be the man you want me to be," Ronan said, his voice barely above a whisper. Anna smiled, her eyes filled with understanding. "I don't need you to be anyone else. I just need you to be you, and that's enough." The room fell silent again, but this time it was a different kind of silence. It wasn't the weight of unspoken words or hidden pain, but a quiet understanding between them. Ronan had shared his story, and in doing so, he had begun to let go of some of the hurt he had carried for so long. For the first time in a long while, he allowed himself to feel something other than the emptiness that had surrounded him for years. and for the first time he realized that maybe, just maybe, he could let someone in again. The days following Ronan's confession were filled with a new kind of peace. It wasn't the same peace that Ronan had once found in the silence of the mountains, but something more alive, more real. It was the kind of peace that comes when two people begin to trust one another, when the weight of the past no longer holds them captive. For the first time in years, Ronan felt a sense of hope, not because his past had changed, but because he had finally allowed someone to share it with him. Anna, for her part, had never been one to give up easily. She understood that Ronan's journey wasn't one that could be completed overnight. She had known from the moment she had arrived in the mountains that this was going to be a long and difficult path. But it was a path she was willing to walk for herself and for him. She had come here to build a life with Ronan, not just to escape her own past, but to help him heal from his. The days grew longer as spring arrived in the mountains. The snow melted, revealing patches of green grass and wildflowers that seemed to appear overnight. Anna and Ronan spent more time outside, working together to plant a small garden near the cabin. It was hard work, but it was also rewarding. They laughed together as they worked, something that had seemed impossible just a few months ago. Their bond grew stronger each day, like the roots of the plants they were tending to. Ronan's walls were no longer as high as they once were. He still had his moments of quiet, his times when he would retreat into himself, but Anna had come to understand that these moments were not about her. They were simply part of who he was, and when those moments passed, he was there, present, kind, and ready to be with her again. They had both learned to give each other space when needed, but also to hold each other close when the world seemed too big. One afternoon as they worked in the garden, Anna turned to Ronan with a question that had been on her mind for some time. "Ronan," she said, wiping the sweat from her brow, "do you ever think about what's next? What the future holds for us?" Ronan paused, his hand resting on the shovel. For a moment he said nothing, his gaze distant as he looked out over the mountains. Anna waited patiently, knowing that this wasn't a question he could answer quickly. It wasn't a simple thing, to imagine a future after so many years of isolation. Finally, Ronan spoke, his voice thoughtful. "I've spent so many years thinking the future was something I had no control over. I thought the past would always be with me, that the pain would never go away. But now I see something different. With you, I see a future. It's not clear, not easy, but it's ours. And that's all I need." Anna smiled, her heart full. She had never asked for a perfect life. She didn't need perfection. She needed a life built on understanding, on love. And that was what they were creating together, one day at a time. That evening, after a day of hard work in the garden, they sat by the fire, the warmth of the flames a comfort against the chill of the night. Anna leaned against Ronan, her head resting on his shoulder as they watched the fire crackle. The stars outside were bright, filling the sky with light. It was a peaceful moment, one that Anna had come to treasure. In the quiet, she realized that this life, the one they were building together, was exactly what she had been searching for. "I've never felt more at home than I do here with you," Anna said softly, her voice full of emotion. Ronan turned to her, his eyes warm in the firelight. "I never thought I'd feel like this again. You've changed everything for me, Anna. You brought me back to life." The words were simple, but they held so much weight. In that moment, Anna understood. Ronan wasn't just thanking her for being with him. He was thanking her for helping him rediscover a part of himself that he had buried long ago. The part that was capable of love, of connection, of healing. As the weeks passed, the changes in their lives became more apparent to those who knew them. The people in the nearby town had heard rumors about Ronan's new companion, the woman who had come to live with him in the mountains. Some were skeptical at first, unsure of what to make of the situation. They had always seen Ronan as a man who wanted nothing to do with society, a man who lived by his own rules. But as time went on, it became clear that Ronan had found something he had never thought possible, a partner who understood him, who accepted him, and who was willing to build a future with him. One day, after several months of living together in the cabin, Ronan and Anna made a decision that would forever change their lives. They decided to marry. The decision was not made lightly. They had both faced their own fears and doubts, but they had come to realize that they didn't need anything grand to make their commitment to each other real. They didn't need a big ceremony or an elaborate celebration. What mattered was the promise they made to each other. to walk through life together, to face whatever came their way, and to never let go of the bond they had created. The ceremony was simple but beautiful. They stood outside the cabin, surrounded by the mountains they had come to love, and exchanged vows in front of the small group of friends they had made in the town. It wasn't a grand wedding by any means, but to Anna and Ronan it was perfect. The vows they exchanged that day were a testament to the love they had built, the trust they had shared, and the future they were committed to creating together. As they stood hand in hand, looking out over the vast landscape, Anna knew that she had made the right choice. She had come to the mountains to find a new life, but what she had found was so much more than she had ever imagined. She had found love, healing, and a partner who would stand by her side for the rest of her days. Ronan, too, knew that he had found something he had never thought possible, a love that had healed the wounds of his past and given him the strength to move forward. With Anna by his side, he no longer felt like the man trapped in the mountains hiding from the world. He was a man with a future, a man who had found peace, and a man who had finally learned to love again. Together, they had built a life that was simple but rich in meaning, and as the sun set behind the mountains, casting a golden glow over the land, they knew that this was only the beginning of their journey. They had faced their pasts, their fears and their doubts, and together they had overcome them all. Now they were ready to face whatever the future held, side by side with love as their guide.